we're going to go through all the emotions. We're going to feel happy and excited, but we're also going to feel depressed and needy. And when we're having any of those emotions, but yet have this level of self-love within us, we can let go of the judgment of whatever emotion is we're feeling.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ALLSMITH. Today's guest is someone whose courage lives in her transparency and whose purpose flows straight from the heart. She's an optometrist by trade, but a seer of souls by calling. She's the author of The Love Liar, a memoir of codependency, narcissism, and the pursuit of self-love. A raw and redemptive story of heartbreak, healing, and the lifelong return to self. She's also contributed chapters to 2 other books, Pieces of Me, a women's storytelling project releasing this August, and Soulful Leadership, where she explores how true self-love can heal the world. She's a mother, a mystic, and a fierce storyteller. Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Carin LaCount. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much for having me here, Bryce. I'm really excited for this.
Your voice is so peaceful, and it tells me that you've done the inner work to not necessarily seek validation and this pat on the back from others, but that your communication strategy and your storytelling comes from the heart center, comes from the soul. Where does this deep love and meaning come from within your essence and how you choose to communicate with the world?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. And it's got many layers to it. I'd have different answers to this question over the many, even over the last 10 years. I'd have probably a different answer to this every maybe 12 to 18 months. So it really speaks to the process that we all go through. I mean, I feel that's the purpose of actually being in physical form on this planet, is to pursue this question, whether we do it consciously or subconsciously. And for myself, I have I'm just born into a soul that this is my purpose for being here, is really figuring this out. And it's not just for myself and for my kids, but I feel very strongly that's why I published the book. That's why I write so much, because and that's why I'm so vulnerable with my story, because I feel that it's the only way to really, embody the purpose that I have here. So it starts with a question that my mother asked me when I was 6 years old. She was exhausted. She had 5 of us kids, and I was the second youngest. And she came in to tuck me into bed at night, and I asked her if she would kiss all of my stuffed animals before giving me a kiss goodnight. And she threw up her hands and said, "Well, what would you ever do if I died?" A moment of overwhelm that I didn't know what to do with at the time. I didn't know how to answer her question, but I took it in very deeply. And it's that question that stuck with me after she passed away suddenly a few days later of a brain aneurysm. And I have been digging in ever since to try to understand that. And I wrote to that in my book. But even in the book, that was one layer of understanding her question and how that directed my life, and how my response to that was to become a people pleaser. I really needed her validation, but that's something that I'm realizing was her demonstrating to me her own inability to love herself in that moment, which I don't fault her for. I mean, we all do these things. We all say these make these comments. The problem is that her comment just had been highlighted by her sudden death, and it's what really drove much more deeply the the effect of that question. And so when we ask, when we're engaging in any sort of conversation with somebody, our children or mentors or anybody, and we are caught up in this idea of needing validation from them for our lovability or any sort of validation we're needing, that is a moment that we are not self loving. And the effect of that is it's going to have consequences that might be very minor and subliminal and never be picked up on. Or in the case with my mother, it really informed my entire life journey. And I feel like that's a beautiful thing. I feel that for so long I wondered about that question, and I was tempted to judge that question as just, the wrong thing for a mother to say to a child at that age. But it was perfect in that it was said to me, and that here I am 52 years later, and it has been a really powerful touch point for my life. And it is what has informed my how I parent my kids. And I think it's just the most important thing that we as humans need to dig into and really understand self love from that point of, wow, what is it that I do need from other people because I can't give it to myself?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful answer. I really appreciate you taking the time to create some clarity around that. For you to be 6 years old and the communication strategy or the response rather in a moment of overwhelm, as you beautifully articulated in your storytelling there. Mom, can you kiss all my stuffed animals before you kiss me? And then just like, oh, one more thing. What would you do if I died? That's such a heavy question for a 6 year old. But for you to take that and use it to unlock reservoirs of beauty and sharing and service and contribution and metaphorical storytelling and relatability and vulnerability, that's really powerful. You could have very easily gone a different path. You could have very easily gone the victim mentality, steered your ship towards drug abuse, alcoholism, all kinds of things that, you know, wouldn't have served the world. But I find it so beautiful the pace at which you speak. It's very patient. It tells me that you're very thought out on your words, that you are articulating from a place of feeling, a place of emotion, of the heart center, the soul center, and a place of reflection where you've danced, you've spent some time there, which means that you've peacefully meditated, you've reflected, you've prayed, you've done some things that require some uncomfortable internal work that aren't just spitting off thought-provoking or viral quotes on a podcast, but they're actually real. They have roots to them, which is why I think so much of the lyrics that come from your mouth are resonating with people, and people are taking a hold of this and realizing like, whoa, this is some real stuff. And Self love really isn't the easy choice, it's the honest one. And so when you were presented with that experience at 6 years old, was there a moment in time where you kind of decided, like, whoa, I didn't anticipate my mom's passing? It's a very traumatic and difficult experience. How did you kind of lay the groundwork for what was to come next for your life and use it as something that could help push you forward as opposed to something that could pull you back?
Well, of course, at the age of 6, you're not quite as conscious of the whole experience. And I I felt as though it was my fault that my mother passed, left me because I didn't answer her question. And it sparked some very deeply ingrained people pleasing that my stepmother, when she came along a couple years later, helped ingrain that even further. My parents' love was very conditional because it's the only kind of love that they understood. You know, parents often don't know how to parent, they don't know how to love their children. And so they teach them that, well, you do as I say, you make me proud, and I will love you. And that's the accepted form of love and how to raise our children.
Just to be clear
And
there, what you mean, I think, is when you do as I say, I give you love and validation.
right,
I give you affection, I give you nurturing, and I give you rewarding behavior when you're compliant to not necessarily my demands, but when you're compliant to the instructions that are at play.
and I won't leave or in some manner withhold or withdraw my love.
Uh, what's so interesting there is like how people treat dogs. Oh, when they
Mm.
do good, it's good boy or good girl. Here's a treat. You went potty outside. Cool. Let me love on you. Da da da. Oh, you were bad. I'm gonna ignore you. Oh, you were bad. You peed in the house. I'm not gonna feed you. It's interesting because there's a unique balance, right, between trying to create compliance and then the optimization of love. How would you depict that for people? Like, I don't think parents are necessarily doing it on purpose. I think you verbalized it perfectly. It's what they know in their relationship with love.
Right,
What
right.
would you say is what we're experiencing or what most of us observe, and then most optimal to try to create a little bit of a better roadmap for people?
Right. It just boils down to self love, loving ourselves enough so that we don't need our children to make us proud. We don't need our children to behave and do what we say. We don't need our 6 year old to appreciate us for giving their stuffed animals kisses when we've got so many other things to do. And to love ourselves when we're to have awareness around that. You know, we're all going to say things like that. We're all going to be in a moment when we're in fear, because when we're not in love, we're in fear. And we're in fear because we have so much to do and we don't know how we're going to get it all done, or we're in fear because we're worried about what other people are going to think of our child who's behaving this way or that way. We're we have all these different sources of fear, and that fear blocks the love. But if we can stop for a moment and have this feeling of love for ourselves, we're not going to be asking of those around us to validate us.
Such a great point. I had an amazing conversation with a close friend and a gentleman that is my current healer, and we kind of talked about most people misbehave in moments of fear, uncertainty, doubt, being tired, or being hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was that moment for your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so interesting is that that's just a moment of being human.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the midst of being human, sometimes we overreact or we misbehave. But if we're looking at the total encompassing development of a young person, it goes back to exactly what you said, which is if you're trying to diffuse energy or teach somebody something or be supportive or do X, Y, and Z thing, you have to be that first. Talking about it is one thing, acting about it is another thing, but actually being that is a different level to the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're articulating it very perfectly. And I think it goes back to there's so many things within the human experience that are seen or heard, but there's this thing that maybe is an intuitive sense, maybe it's only empaths can pick up on it. Not really sure. But there's an energetic chord sometimes around when you are that and you live that way and you're trying with the most honest intention, it gets received a little bit differently than if you're just trying to say it or show it as opposed to just being it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so here's what's interesting is I became a people pleaser, classic codependent, and I got involved in relationships as I got older that led to my marriage. And my my husband was very insecure. I was very insecure. We both had this fear within us that we were not enough. We did not love ourselves, and we coped with that from completely opposite sides of the spectrum. So his was to cope with it through narcissistic behavior, manipulating, coercion, gaslighting, doing whatever he needed to do to get love from me or behavior from me that would validate him. Whereas I was doing the opposite. I was giving myself away. I was in, martyrdom, trying to manipulate him for love by just giving him everything I could. And that to a point, it almost killed me. I had developed an autoimmune condition called ulcerative colitis, and I had several flare ups. And it was even after we were divorced, 2 years after we were divorced, and I was still caught up in that dance with him, that codependent narcissistic dance, where I broke down so significantly that I really literally almost died. And that was the experience that I had that told me, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to see what it is that I'm doing to myself because I nearly died and deprived my children of the work that I had been doing on myself, trying to understand. I mean, it was a powerful piece of work that I did even just to get out of the marriage, to let go of that safety net of conditional fake love that I had in the marriage, and look for something more without really knowing what that something more even was at the time. And I was doing really deep work, but still not quite there. And I just, if I had not survived that, my children would have been caught right back up into the legacy of codependency and narcissism that my ex-husband and I had from even our parents and our grandparents. I mean, it was a whole generational pattern. And I decided that the buck stops with me. I'm going to figure this out. And I wrote the book. And then published the book, came out 3 years ago this month, 2022. And I knew that I wasn't done with the work. It's a powerful story, and it's a page turner, as I'm told often. But it's beautiful. I love the story, but I'm loving the after the 3 years it's been since then. I got caught up again in narcissistic, codependent patterns, and I recognized it more quickly, not just in romantic relationships, actually less in romantic relationships, more in friendships. I was back in that dynamic of being called out as being codependent and having people project onto me their deeply unself-loving, broken patterns that they weren't willing to look at, but they were so quick to point out in me. And I'm kind of a magnet for that, because I am so vulnerable, and I am going to own it, and I am going to do this work. But it was also so painful to have people in my life who would be so cruel and say these things to me, but yet know that that's not. I had developed my self-love enough to recognize that this wasn't about me, it was about them. And it's helped me to more deeply understand and articulate exactly what self-love is. And it's been a challenge because of the title of the book, frankly. You have the word narcissism in there, and that just causes people's minds to go to this place of, oh, these awful people, and my ex was this and that, and they want to, you know, commiserate over the experiences that they had in their abusive relationship. And I would just put my hands up and say, that's not where I'm at in this conversation. I don't believe that we need to be vilifying them. I believe we need to be looking at their behavior, looking at our response to their behavior, and really understanding from a level of what is pure, unconditional self love. Because it's clear that narcissism and codependency is void of that pure, unconditional self love. And neither one is better than the other. They're both very destructive.
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level. So true. To create some information gathering for people and some data input, I'd love to create some defining of terms for people based on your lenses, starting with codependency. What does that mean for people? How do people observe it, recognize it, and kind of upgrade their operating system around this phrase or this term, codependency?
Whenever we are in fear that we're not loved, we're going to respond with either codependent tendencies or narcissistic tendencies. And that means that if we're codependent, we're going to be manipulating people by giving whatever we can of ourselves to a point where it's destructive to ourselves so that they will love us. And what we're striving for is conditional love because we don't understand unconditional love. And then the same for narcissism. They go about it in the opposite way, and it's a way that is socially more aggressive, and yet it comes from that same place of not having that pure unconditional love for ourselves.
Would you relate that to just the concept of a buyer and a seller? The codependent person is the seller. They're selling themselves to try to soften, admit fault, lean in a little bit, while the other person is, maybe practicing the art of gaslighting a little bit, not taking ownership, but they're craving being chased, and they're almost playing a role too. So they're the buyer. And you have this unique relationship where one's chasing, one's running, and it creates this tensionist dynamic that seems to work for a little bit because it creates maybe some excitability, some sexual tension, some yin to the yang. And it works until it doesn't work anymore because you're not actually a team. You're actually like adversaries that are operating on different ends of the spectrum. But it seems to work in the beginning. So it almost tickles and tricks the brain and creates this dopamine hit of like, oh, I couldn't get that thing, but then I got it. And then once you get it, you don't really know how to maintain it.
Well, it can't be maintained because it's an illusion. It's not the real thing. That's where the pursuit of self-love is. I mean, that's why I have that in the subtitle of the book, because that's the crux of the whole process. To understand that if we have this source of love within us and we can tap into that and we don't need that love and validation from others, imagine how that would inform our decisions. We wouldn't have to be codependent or narcissistic because we would just be self loving. And if we're self loving, that's how we can spread that love to others.
I like that a lot. When you think of that term, self-love, what does that look like? How does somebody get there if they're maybe in pursuit of that?
Yeah, it's a quiet knowing in your heart that you are loved no matter what. You are loved even if that person is being abusive to you or that person leaves you in some form or another. You have that within yourself to love yourself, feel compassion for yourself. It's a moment where we're going to go through all the emotions. We're going to feel happy and excited, but we're also going to feel depressed and needy. And when we're having any of those emotions, but yet have this level of self-love within us, we can let go of the judgment of whatever emotion is we're feeling. If we're feeling depressed, we can let go of this idea that there's something wrong with us and that this is bad and that we shouldn't be depressed, or that something's wrong with us if we're chronically depressed, and understand that that depression is actually serving us. and know that that there's this love that holds us and keeps us safe always. And so we can just be in that place of melancholy and process it, just feel it and not have a judgment about how long we're there or that we're even there at all.
Yeah. I like that depiction a lot around just the word be. I think as humans, we're always placing labels on things, and as a byproduct, we create judgment based on the labels. Oh, we're sad, we're depressed. That's now victimized as bad or labeled as bad. We're supposed to be positive and full of gratitude because that's what society sees as, a high performing individual that's going to receive love and be attractive and be whatever. And I don't know how realistic that is. I mean, we talk a lot about nature on this podcast, and there's times and there's seasons where trees lose their leaves, flowers fall off, like things aren't receiving enough water or sunlight, and they go through a tough season of life. That doesn't make them any less valuable. It just means they're different. And I think as
Mhm.
humans, it's important to label things not as good or bad, but just that they are. And I think what you're talking about with self love is unapologetically allowing yourself to travel through the seasons of life, recognizing that you're there for a reason. And when you are experiencing sadness, that doesn't mean you are depressed and you have to go on medication and you're this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, let's take an assessment. This is just a data point. Let's look at habits. Let's look at sleep. Let's look at food. Let's look at environment. Let's look at relationships. Let's look at our behavior. Let's take an assessment. Maybe we just need some distance. Maybe we need some personal time. Maybe we're working too much and we need some time in nature. Maybe we're not filling the financial bucket or the emotional bucket or the faith bucket. And we need to pay a little bit more attention to some of these things. But I feel like what you're depicting around self love is removing judgment, realizing that our feelings and our emotions are kind of, they're tapping us on the shoulder and saying, hey, listen, hey, pay attention to this. And when you pay attention to it, you can make the necessary adjustments to inch closer to homeostasis or maybe closer to the other side of the spectrum. But in a world that's full of motion, it's never going to be one thing or the other. We're always this or always that. But the human mind and the construct wants to be so understood that it wants to create labels of security and grounding so that the mind can conceptualize it. But in reality, it's is a constant flow. I mean, the ocean is probably the greatest example of this.
Yeah. What I find myself to be very blessed with is the experience I had with narcissism and codependency and how that's informed my approach to teaching about self love because the human psyche judges. We just do. And when you throw in the word narcissism, people assume that that means narcissists have too much self love, that that's their problem. They love themselves too much, when in fact it's because they have so little self love that they're fighting to glean whatever love they can from others. And then we end up vilifying them. And that doesn't serve any of us because then we're not going to understand. And I have come to this from a place of spiritual study. I mean, I have, since I was in my early 20s, been pursuing the answers to the questions of who we are and why we're here and why do we suffer. And it had led me to a book 20 some years ago called The Disappearance of the Universe that introduced me to the philosophies of A Course in Miracles. And the biggest takeaway that I took from that was how important it is that we let go of this need to judge and label. And the more that we're able to do that, the more peace we'll be able to find. So, any sort of labels as, this is good or this is bad or this is narcissistic, this is codependent, and just allowing ourselves to really settle into what is about it and not judge it and look at how it can serve us, how it can hold us, how it can bring us to the next stage in life.
No, totally. I want to double tap on that and like create a little bit more clarity and like a zoomed in approach there, because I definitely think that when you look at narcissism, I think it is a pursuit of self-love. So they're doing things to try to get external validation. And then when I think of people pleasing, it's almost the same thing. You're doing things to try to get external validation. They have a
Absolutely.
they have a slightly different lens, but in theory they're very similar. But I wanna double tap as to better understand the ego, because the ego dances in this too, where it's like it complicates what the soul knows is simple. Love yourself like your life depends on it. But in a world where everyone's concerned about external validation and what everybody else thinks, and there's the social hierarchy that Jordan Peterson talks about, like if seven people get into an elevator, it starts calm and collected. Then everybody's kind of looking left, right, up, down, kind of measuring, like, I'm taller than that person. I bet I make more money than that person. I'm better looking than that person. I smell better than that person. It's this constant comparative analysis versus allowing ourselves to just unapologetically be and lean more towards collaboration rather than competition. But in a world that is biologically around survival of the fittest, I feel like it almost goes against biological nature to not tinker with different methodologies as to try to one up in response to trying to survive or make more money or adapt to a technological revolution that doesn't really align with our biological nature, in pursuit of loving self, making money, providing, and all the different hats and titles that people wear throughout their day.
Yeah. Um,
Some complicated shit, right? Like when
yeah.
we want to simplify it, and I'm like you, like I kind of want to get to the point of like, okay, narcissism and codependency, they're similar. They're both seeking love. But naturally within our DNA is this comparison. This, how do I win? How do I stay ahead of my competition to make more money, to feed my family, to do X, Y, and Z? It almost is like this, it's hard to articulate, but it's almost like a feeling of people are just trying to win. They're trying to stay alive, and they're finding any means necessary to try to do that. And that comes with making the wrong decision oftentimes.
Yeah. Yeah. The ego is immersed in this concept that it's not worthy, doesn't deserve love, and it's in a constant fight to disprove that or blow past the need for that. And it's so easy to get caught up. And I find it fascinating in this world where we're at now, post COVID. I mean, COVID was I think we're going to understand more and more and more as the years move on past COVID, how much that has affected humanity in this whole idea around self-love and spirituality and understanding that we're always loved, we're always taken care of. Um, we don't need to fight so hard. If we can get out of our own way, we can things will fall into place for us. But we're at a place right now in history where that's really hard to see how that can possibly be. And I think in the world of entrepreneurship, there's a level of panic that is it's beautiful in that it is people are working on trying to figure this out. And I have complete faith that humanity will. I know I'm talking pretty abstract here. And so I'm trying to boil it down a little bit in terms of, again, it's just this idea that we're not worthy and that we need to manipulate things in whatever way, however we do it. If we're using codependent means or narcissistic means, they're both just opposite sides of the same coin as I see it, in terms of especially the idea of self-love. And the more that we can have the faith and have the love and have the awareness in any moment before we do or say anything, to understand if what we're doing or saying, if there's any shred of manipulation that we're using to try to get someone to buy from us or to do what we ask them to do, or in you know in whatever it is what we need from someone, if we're recognizing how we might be able to not need that, how we might be able to have that within ourselves. I'm not sure if that's making any sense.
But it is, and I think it's why you wrote the book, because both of these concepts live in the clouds. And the
Mm-hmm.
goal is to bring them down to make them digestible to young people in the world and people that are on their journey. They're simple words, but they're not simple in meaning. And there's a lot of complexity around why we choose narcissistic and codependent behaviors in the pursuit of self-love. I mean, I have love tattooed on me because I really think that a huge reason why we're here on this world is to love and to learn. And I think we make great choices, we make poor choices, but all of us are in pursuit of striving to love. And some of that comes from mommy issues, daddy issues, how we were raised, environment. There's so many different variables. And one of my favorite phrases on the planet is seek to understand. It's part of the reason why we started the podcast, because everybody has a story we know absolutely nothing about. I don't think people are purposefully making choices to be bad in nature. I think they're doing it to meet their needs. They're doing it to try to find love. They're doing it to try to gain validation and move the needle in the right direction. And sometimes that leads to poor consequences. Sometimes that's not right. And the
Right,
goal is
right.
to have these optimal and transparent conversations to allow people's emotions to be met, but also to hold people accountable and realize that, like, self-love begins where radical responsibility begins. Taking full responsibility first And then the healing can begin, because you stop blaming others, and you start blaming circumstance. You start realizing, like, hey, I'm in control of my destiny. And I think that's a huge part of our conversation today, is for people to look in the mirror, to recognize, maybe have therapists, go through lifestyle design practices, meet with support groups, have honest conversations with people within their tribe, journal. I mean, like you talked about, writing fills the gaps within our thinking. It helps create transparency in the clusterfuck of our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And by practicing all these different modalities, it helps remove the fog and the smoke in the mirrors to create a little bit more clarity and realize, like, okay, these certain habits are not serving me. These ones over here are. Here are the step-by-step processes and procedures that are going to help me grow and overcome this challenge, so I can get to a place of self-love, rather than ruminating in the things that are constantly causing challenges and issues.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there's so many moving parts to this process of self-love, and especially when you are very empathic, codependent like myself, and working with people on this concept of self-love, and even just talking about it in terms of new relationships. I mean, I'm fairly new to Austin here. I moved here from Wisconsin about 4 years ago, so I've been forging new friendships and relationships, and um, battling with this idea of when someone is not honoring me and is using whatever manipulations that they are using, again, to get my validation or my love or my friendship or whatnot, and yet having compassion for them, for their needs, while also learning to distance myself and understand that there are some people who are not going to, they're not at a point in life where they're ready to hear or understand the self-love lesson, and be okay with that. And for me, I've been able to use that to deepen my own understanding around self-love in a really, really beautiful way. But on the surface, it looks like a broken friendship. It looks like me walking away from somebody, or, you know, I was in a mastermind group that I had come to recognize was the same dance of narcissism and codependency. I mean, the person heading the group was using narcissistic behaviors and tactics to keep getting me to buy in again and buy in again. And all the while I'm trying to teach him about self-love, and he's not hearing it. And at the same time pointing the finger at me and telling me that I'm not being self-loving. And that was a hugely informative experience that I had to deepen my understanding around this idea of self-love. It's like, wow, I could sit and just be pissed off and pointing the finger and blaming, but that just completely takes my power away. And rather, I realized that I needed to walk away, and I did. And it's been a really beautiful, transformational deepening of the concept of what really is self-love. And it always comes back to this idea that if we're in fear and not self-loving, we're going to be manipulating others for whatever it is that we think we need. And I feel that that is the piece that if I can help others understand that through my experiences, and as you say, you write it out, it's almost like a download from source to to figure this all out and articulate it. And I've been doing a lot of writing about that concept. And I get in my head because I'm so worried that I'm going to be offending somebody. But I let that go because that's their choice to find offense to that. And it's their choice to, at some point, maybe grow from it, learn from it, and be accountable to themselves and to own their own shit. Um, but it's just another piece of my own self-love journey to recognize what that was about and be able to write about it and help people from that story to think and have a little bit more awareness about their own behaviors and how they're responding to people.
I'm just stoked that I finally got you to cuss on our conversation today. You said shit.
Oh,
Cool. I want to challenge you a
yeah.
little bit there. Where in 2018, I went through huge life change. Was navigating and into a relationship. My left elbow had a pretty traumatic injury, and I was kind of navigating this shift of identity from professional athlete to coach, entrepreneur, podcaster, writer. Didn't really know what was next, but felt like I was meant for something different. That was kind of catapulted, as I mentioned to you briefly before, about deathbed conversations with parents as they were navigating cancer. But I got stuck a little bit in this poor me, nobody understands. I have this resume, nobody gets it. I'm not being validated, not being loved. I'm going to do whatever means necessary. Self reliance is everything. Just outwork the competition, be overly consistent, get the best guests in the world in the podcast, lift the most weights, have the comeback story from the injury, blah, blah, blah. And it worked me into the ground. It led to poor choices, poor decision making. Um, and I'm so thankful I went through it because it helped create a better man and a better human. And after enduring and overcoming a lot of things that I was not anticipating, I found my wife and I found myself again. And I feel at peace. And a lot of that peace feels like it brought me back to my inner child, where it's more so about play, where I didn't even know what narcissism was. I didn't even know what codependency was. It was like, hey, I just want to learn some cool things and I want to play. And if people want to play in the sandbox with me, cool. If they want to play a sport with me, cool. If not, like, here's kind of what I'm going to do. And it wasn't about likes or any sort of external validation or measurables. It was just like, you know what? Like, we have such a finite time on this earth, and I want to do things that light my heart on fire with people that light my heart on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, like, as somebody that's gone through the challenges of codependency and narcissism, do you think maybe you carry the lenses where you view the world through both of those two ends of the spectrum? Or do you think that you're in pursuit of kind of this neutrality of like, you know what, like, I'm just gonna pursue forward with everything and everyone just gets a blank slate. It's not good, it's not bad, and I'm gonna observe based on the knowledge that's in my toolbox.
Well, let me answer that question by explaining to you how I parent. Because my children are, my daughter's going to be 21 tomorrow. And
Happy
my
early
son is
birthday to
20.
her.
Mm-hmm.
The day after yours.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. She was my 37th birthday present. Yeah, and my son is 24, and it's it's been a really big struggle getting divorced from their father, publishing a book that I don't call him out as being a narcissist per se, but it kind of is assumed given the title. And yet, really wanting to understand narcissism and codependency and the dance that we were in as a piece of necessary, just really needing to understand it in order to be the best parent that I can be and to stop the buck, and not carry my generational trauma in conditional love tendencies and pass it on to my children. My son is recently been diagnosed as bipolar, and I'm recognizing a lot of that in his dad's behavior, who he's not been officially diagnosed, but having a completely open heart to whatever my children are going through. My daughter she seems she's a model daughter. She's going to college. She's on the dean's list. She's a go-getter. She's wired very much like me. She's got her shit together. My son, he struggles and he struggles, and yet I have always allowed both of my kids to be angry with me and to criticize me. I've always been open to recognizing when I fucked up in raising them and how I might have done things this way or that way, and owning it and talking to them about it. And I've been committed 100% to giving them a safe space to be able to tell me whatever's going on in their life, tell me what they think of me or don't think of me. And that I feel is 100% because of the self-love work that I've done, because I've allowed myself to be, I've been able to give myself the love that I need, even when I'm not getting the validation. I've gotten a lot of judgment from my family with the ways in which I've raised my children, the the permissive parenting that I have done just so that I can give my kids space to do what they're going to do, get involved in what they're going to get involved in, get into trouble that they're going to get into trouble, and feel safe to be able to come to me when they're in trouble. And that I think is ultimately what this is all about. And it's that lack of judgment and that lack of needing to have my kids be perfect so that I can float them out on on social media and tell everybody how great they are. And they're kids, and they're really great stuff. My son he's amazing. He's benching. What does he say? I think he can deadlift more than your average NFL player. So
Nice.
he's really managed a lot of his codependent or his bipolar by going to the gym and working out, and in the self-awareness that that kid has is through the roof. And I know
So
that that's
cool.
what
That's
is
kind of what I
saving
wanted
him.
to ask you about next, which is maybe I'm incorrect scientifically here, but I'm genuinely curious. I don't know if it's just lifestyle, if it's habits, if it's upbringing, if it's a genetic makeup, if it's nutrition. There's probably lots of different variables. Vaccines could probably play a role in this too. But I personally really struggle with accepting that somebody is this or that. Like they have ADD, they have ADHD, they're bipolar. It's like, yes, maybe. But also, it sounds to me that like managing his symptoms through lifting weights allows him to come closer to baseline. And so maybe there's something there as far as the dosage of lifestyle, of food, of environment, of connection. And I know, I mean, you could probably relate to this too. Like I've had abnormal behavior when I've just been in a tough spot. And I think creating a semblance of more peace, a closer connection to nature has mitigated some of those symptoms, including allergies, including patience, and this self love concept. What are your thoughts on that as a doctor and somebody who's parented two beautiful children, and how we kind of diagnose and we create an understanding like this person has this versus this person experiences this sometimes, but when they do X, Y, and Z activities, they're closer to baseline? Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Carin Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Carin is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag or even an overnighter. Carin's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to Kinneon.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. I resisted the labels myself. Neither of my kids have been vaccinated. Um, I did all the things. My son was exhibiting behavioral issues when he was, kindergarten. I remember the kindergarten teacher saying, if we don't get a handle on this now, there's going to be serious trouble ahead. And we were doing all the things. We were doing auditory processing therapy, vision therapy, um, biofeedback therapy. And all that did was really drive home the message that something was wrong with him and something needed to be fixed. And say that again? Well, he was, I would say the serious behavioral issues began when we got divorced. But that also coincided with him becoming 16 and getting his driver's license. And then I was really, pardon? Hormone shifts, and I was sick in the hospital, and he almost lost me, and there was a lot there, um, and so, but I keep my mind open, and I study everything, and I study astrology, and I study different personality assessments, and I really believe very strongly that we come into this life under a particular astrological sign that gives us these tendencies, or these ways in which we tend to relate to the world, and those are specifically to serve us. And bipolar, be it what it is, if it's mental, emotional, whatever, it is a superpower that is misunderstood, as is everything. I mean, my superpower that has been a challenge for me is that, especially being codependent, is I always understand and have compassion for both sides of the argument. And I mean, so that's just an example, but with my son, his brain is just operating at a level that's just a much higher speed than most people, and trying to figure out a way to manage that within the constraints of society, and rules of law, as well as support and nurture himself. I mean, it's been a fascinating study of self-love from all the different perspectives. And
I think you hit the nail on the head right there, which is I'm going to create an analogy here. When I look at medicine, there's preventative medicine, lifestyle habits, working out, exercise, nutrition, sleep, and then there's reactive medicine, some sort of pharmaceuticals, surgeries, diagnoses, a little bit of a peek under the hood to then try to create some very specific changes. Well, which one weighs more in our society based on monetization and respect? Reactive medicine. And
yeah,
so what's really interesting about this is, yes, bipolar can be a thing for sure. But why is it labeled as, hey, something's wrong with you? I loved what you said, which is, well, there's actually a superpower here. His brain operates just different according to societal norms, which means when put in the right environment, this dude can freaking thrive. He's deadlifting equivalent of most NFL players. He has a skill set that's not being highlighted, and it's the equivalent of trying to get a fish to climb a tree. But our world wants to create conformity. Oh, you're not like everybody else. To echo Kendrick Lamar, they not like us. But guess what? Elon's not like us. Joe Rogan's not like us. A lot of very successful people are not like us.
mm-hmm.
But they had some sort of support system and belief system, which I'm so thankful that you are the mother of these two incredible children, because you have a foundational belief which is going to give them the roadmap to thrive. But our world doesn't do that. Our world says, what's wrong with you? You're not conforming. You're not falling in line. Let us depict you as different, give you all these auditory and extracurricular activities that make you feel like you're off kilter and different, because now you're going to be a slave to the system. We can control you. You're labeled this. You're not your name. You're not your family. You're bipolar. And now it just feels like you feel the crescendo of the song just die. And it's
Yeah.
like, it doesn't have to be that. The crescendo can keep going. There's this magic. There's this fireworks. There's these things at the end that can be so fucking cool. And I think with the work that you're doing around intrinsically empowering people around self-love, of like, you can actually tune out all that noise. You can love you and realize that you don't have to follow that path. You can go this way instead of that way.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully people listening to this conversation can really realize that, like, we teach our children how to love themselves by how we love ourselves when nobody's watching. And that's the beautiful change that you made in your life of like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to do it this way. And I don't know exactly the verbiage or the exact roadmap to give you, but by watching me make this incredible change in my life, I hope that you follow suit.
Yeah, and I live it, even with my patients. I mean, I'm an optometrist. Patients come in to see me for an eye exam, and you'd be amazed at how much people denigrate themselves constantly. They come in and they're so worried about their vision, and our vision is so deeply attached to our emotions. And I have patients that scoff at themselves if they miss a letter on the 2020 line. And if I have to change their prescription, they're always assuming the prescription's going up. I'm constantly telling patients, just because the camera's out of focus doesn't mean it's broken. If we're changing your prescription, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or your eyes, or you're doing anything wrong, or you're staring at your computer too much, or all the things. And their patients are always wanting to go to that place where they're beating themselves up because of whatever results there are in their eye exam. And the bifocal question, okay, now we're to a point where we're going to need a bifocal in order to see. And they're just like, oh, it sucks to get old, and all these things. And I just say, hey, it's second puberty. These are all changes. So that's how I live my life, is to always in very subtle ways find a way to reframe. And some people are going to understand on a deeper level than others. And it's all okay. Everybody's at a different level and a different awareness around all of these things. But having the capacity to let go of our judgment in any moment is just the biggest takeaway I would hope that people can have from this conversation, because that can be applied in so many facets of life and have such a deeply profound effect.
Mm-hmm. It aligns with the line that perception is not reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you said is beautiful, which is just because the camera's out of focus doesn't mean it's broken. But all of a sudden, if you're wearing glasses, it's like, oh, you're less than. You can't see as good as other people. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you've got X, Y, and Z dependency now. Now you're even codependent on this tool in order to operate, optimally in the world. And I love that you're in this role to really share that with people, that that's not it. It's simply a tool. And using that tool to optimize your human experience is just part of your individual journey. It's not good, it's not bad, it's neutral. And it's just an individual approach based on the life experiences up until that point, and maybe the genetic makeup. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I want to touch on some really cool questions, and I want to give you like 1 minute at each one of these. So like 1 to 3 sentences to kind of touch on these, and it's going to unpack your story, and I think give some of our listeners a really cool set of actionables that they can take with them today. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Awesome. If you could speak directly to the version of you who was lost in your codependency, what would you tell her now?
I would tell her the same thing I've been saying. Let go of the judgment of whatever you're judging yourself about in this moment, and allow it to just be what it is.
What's one moment in your life where you knew absolute love, not fear? And what was help leading your headspace in that moment?
There was an experience that I had that we could brush it off as it having been a dream, but it was way more powerful than that. It was a moment where my stepmother had passed away about a week before, and my daughter was an infant, was swinging in a little swing, and I was working on clearing out the home office for my dad because my stepmother hoarded all kinds of paperwork that was so unnecessary. So I was cleaning that out, and I had this moment where I looked up and saw her standing in the doorway, and she was full of just light and happiness and joy like I'd never seen her in real life. And I panicked for a moment because I thought I was going to get chewed out for throwing all these things away. And as she looked across the room and she laughed and said, I don't know what I was doing hanging on to all this crap. And she then walked toward me, and the closer she got to me, the less solid she became. She became more and more light, but she was putting her arms up as she came toward me. And as she wrapped her arms around me, she became pure light. And in that moment, that was when I felt extreme, unconditional love, no fear, no judgment, in the most pure sense imaginable. And that really is the moment that I dove into this whole pursuit of self-love. I've been wanting to understand what that was. And I write about that scene in my book. That was the moment.
I'd love to read about that moment. It sounds like it had such a special effect on your body, your physiology, your mind.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. What are the quiet daily decisions that no one sees, but that build your relationship with yourself?
Yeah. It's again becoming aware of how I'm feeling in the moment and letting go of my judgment of it. Time and time and time again, reminding
This
myself
word
again.
judgment seems to come up a lot in our conversation today, and I think people are constantly playing with that. If you were to give people some advice as to how to navigate judgment or preconceived notions, what advice would you give them?
I would say when you're recognizing that you're in judgment of someone, something, yourself, other people, dig in a little deeper and figure out how you feel that judgment is serving you. And then ask yourself if you really need that.
I like that. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday around judgment, ironically. So it's pretty cool that it's popped up in our conversation today. And he was saying, we're going to get thousands of thoughts a day. They're going to enter, they're going to leave, you're going to get inputs, outputs, pokes, pries, and everything in between. Allow them to come. They're not always in your control. But use breath work, use grounding, use posture to then align with self and do a little personal check-in and think to yourself, like you just said, where does this judgment fit with my mission? Is your mission to love and to serve? Is it to understand? Is it to report on some of the judgments and things that come up? I mean, everybody's kind of got their own version of their mission and why they believe that they're here. And I thought that was a cool filtration system as to how and where to place judgment.
And I think that oftentimes people get caught up in the difference between judgment and discernment.
Hmm. How would you define discernment for people?
Discernment is a, put it simply, it is cold outside. I've discerned that it is cold outside, and so I need to put on a jacket in order to be more comfortable out there. A judgment about that is it's cold outside, it sucks, can't do what I wanted to do, and you allow that judgment and that energy of the negative judgment of that to influence your mood, influence your decisions that are probably not best serving you.
I like that clear, distinct definition for sure. That creates a little bit of clarity for us for sure.
Yeah.
In your view, what's the link between self-love and the role of humanity trying to survive?
Spiritual gurus have been saying for years that love is what will heal the world, but they don't elaborate on it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. When we're so angry at someone because of, there's so much polarity right now, politically, socially, there's just so much pain and judgment. And again, that judgment is what is driving so many of our decisions and righteousness. We believe we're better than someone else because of who we voted for. And the the important self-love work is to let go of that and understand that people have come to their conclusions because of their life experiences, and they may or may not have the awareness or even emotional maturity to be able to see why they're making the decisions that they're making. But allowing that to be and letting go of our judgment of that is one little step that is going to have a ripple effect on the planet. Just going back again to my mother's question to me and recognizing that that question came from a place of overwhelm and in deep unresolved self-love issues, and how that could be like my life could have gone an entirely, my life did go completely off the rails because of that, and I brought it back in because I did this work around letting go of the judgment of that, and really honoring who she was in that moment and why she said that, and how I could use that then to better direct my life and in my own self-love journey.
You have a very good grasp on the human experience. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your calmness and the beautiful tone in your delivery, Dr. Carin. I think it's cool that you recognize that whether it's political, whether it's medical, whether it's simply just contrast of yin to yang, light, dark, left, right, upper, lower, that the lenses that people carry are based on their personal experiences. They're the knowledge that they have accumulated up until that point. What advice would you give people to recognize that and then remain open minded and malleable, in the sense of, if you have an opinion and I disagree and I come in with my stance and you make a really valid point that maybe perks my eyebrows and really challenges my belief system based on my experiences, and I'm like, whoa, you make a really cool point. Like, I actually am going to move closer to you on that part of the conversation. How can we make that cool again? How can we make that something that diffuses into the world around money, politics, medicine, and simply realizing that, like, we're not meant to agree on everything. We're actually meant to just like formulate our opinions based on our journey. But then I think we're also meant to remain open minded. But in this side picking of a system and integrating the ego, we want to be right. We want to be the hierarchy. And I really don't care about being right. I care about seeking truth and better understanding other people's stories. So I'm curious as to how we can kind of create a safe space to inch people towards that belief system.
Again, it boils right down to self love. So if you are in a conversation with someone and you really need for them to validate your position and say that you're right, that's very unself loving. And you're going to get caught up in a pattern that's going to offend them, and you're going to be offended. And then, you know, whatever extremes that can go to, that's all so damaging. And to be in the moment and recognize that if I loved myself enough to know that I am the only one that needs to validate that my position is my position, and then opening your mind to what they have to say without having to have this righteous indignation. You can ask the questions, you can get deeper in and understand why they're coming from that position, where they might have that belief system. And all that's going to do is open your own mind and heart.
So beautifully said. And to kind of wrap things up today, something that comes to mind is even the best lenses, they need adjusting. Being out of focus is not considered failure. It's simply just feedback. Getting still, practicing the power of the pause, allows us to then get clear and then get back to what truly matters. I think you did a great job summarizing that today, and I really appreciate you sharing all about your book, your personal testimony, and your experiences with your children. Dr. Carin, where can people learn more about you and where can they find the book?
The book is on Amazon, and I have my website, drcarinlacount.com. It's a work in progress. I'm working on getting a blog going regularly also. Um, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
Very cool. You have a special energy to you. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing some of your story and your experience up until now with me and our ALLSMITH community. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed my conversation with Dr. Carin LaCount, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time.